settle into the sleepy mind channel. Today we will explore a hidden mountain city in the clouds, a place where an entire civilization built something that should not have survived. High in the Andes Mountains of Peru, more than 2,400 meters above sea level, there stands a stone city balanced on a narrow ridge, with steep cliffs falling away on either side. This ridge is not wide or forgiving. It is confined, elevated and exposed, shaped by the natural forces that define the surrounding mountains. Clouds move slowly across the peaks, drifting through the space where the city rests, sometimes revealing it clearly, and sometimes softening its edges until it blends into the sky. The position creates a sense of suspension, as if the city exists between ground and air, rather than firmly on either. The terrain surrounding Machu Picchu is steep and difficult, marked by sharp changes in elevation that limit how the area can be approached. Deep valleys cut through the landscape below, while the mountains rise quickly around the ridge, creating a natural enclosure. This is not a place that invites easy movement. Instead, it restricts access, guiding it into specific paths that require effort and familiarity with the terrain. The environment itself acts as a boundary, shaping how the city is reached and experienced. The presence of constant cloud cover adds another layer to this isolation. At times, the clouds gather and move through the ridge, partially obscuring the structures and reducing visibility across the site. At other moments, they drift away, revealing the full outline of the city against the surrounding peaks. This shifting visibility means the city is not always clearly seen, even from nearby positions. It appears and disappears with the movement of the air, creating a natural form of concealment that changes throughout the day. For centuries, Machu Picchu remained outside the awareness of those who moved through the region. During the period when Spanish forces advanced into the lands of the Inca Empire, many settlements were encountered, recorded, and altered. Cities were mapped, repurposed, or dismantled as control of the region changed. Yet this city, positioned high above the valleys and surrounded by natural barriers, was not found. It did not appear in their records, and it was not included in the changes that affected other Inca sites. This absence from historical accounts is significant because it allowed Machu Picchu to remain in its original form after it was abandoned. Without direct contact from outside forces, the structures were not rebuilt or modified. Instead, the city was left as it was, and over time, the natural environment began to move back across it. Vegetation grew along pathways, terraces, and open spaces, gradually covering parts of the city and blending it into the surrounding landscape. This process of overgrowth did not happen suddenly. It developed slowly, layer by layer, as plants took root in the soil and along the edges of stone structures. The city did not collapse into ruin, but instead became less visible, softened by the presence of the environment around it. The combination of isolation and natural coverage helped preserve the site by limiting human interference over long periods of time. When Machu Picchu was brought to wider attention in the early 20th century, what was revealed was not a city that had been heavily altered or reduced to scattered remains. Instead, much of its original structure was still present. The layout of the city could be clearly seen, and the methods used in its construction were visible in detail. This allowed for a closer understanding of how it had been built and how it functioned within its environment. One of the most striking features of the site is the precision of its stone construction. Large blocks of stone were cut into specific shapes and fitted together so closely that there are minimal gaps between them. There is no mortar used to bind these stones. Instead, each piece is carefully shaped so that it rests against the next with exact alignment. The result is a structure where stability comes from the placement and weight of the stones themselves rather than from any additional material. This method of construction is particularly effective in a region where the ground is not completely stable. Machu Picchu is located in an area where seismic activity occurs, meaning that the earth can shift during earthquakes. The tightly fitted stones allow the structures to respond to this movement. Rather than cracking or breaking under pressure, the stones can shift slightly and then return to their original position. This flexibility helps the buildings maintain their form over time. The environment also presents challenges related to water. The region experiences heavy rainfall, and water moves quickly across steep slopes. This movement can weaken soil, increase erosion, and create the conditions for landslides. Building in such a setting requires an awareness of how water behaves and how it can be managed. The presence of stable structures in this environment suggests that these challenges were considered during construction and addressed through design. The choice to build Machu Picchu in this location reflects a deliberate decision rather than a limitation. The ridge, the surrounding peaks, and the shifting clouds all form part of a landscape that is both difficult and controlled. The city is not placed in an open or easily accessible area, but in a position that requires intention to reach and to build upon. This suggests that the location held importance beyond convenience, shaping the way the city was designed and used. Because of its isolation, Machu Picchu remained separate from many of the changes that affected the region after the decline of the Inca Empire. It was not continuously occupied, and it was not widely known beyond its immediate surroundings. Over time, this separation allowed the city to remain largely intact, even as the landscape around it continued to change. The combination of its position, construction methods, and long period of concealment makes Machu Picchu distinct. It is a city that exists within a challenging environment and continues to remain stable within it. The ridge supports it, the clouds move through it, and the surrounding terrain shapes how it is experienced. Each of these elements contributes to the way the city has endured. If you like videos like these, feel free to like and subscribe. More videos are posted weekly. As we continue, we will move further into the geographic setting of Machu Picchu, exploring the surrounding mountains, the river below, and the environmental conditions that influenced how and why this city was built in such a demanding location. The city of Machu Picchu is surrounded by a landscape that is both dramatic and demanding, shaped by steep mountain slopes and deep valleys that define the region. The Andes Mountains do not rise gradually. Instead, they lift sharply from the ground, creating terrain where flat land is rare and movement is controlled by the natural form of the mountains. At Machu Picchu, this results in a setting where the city is positioned along a narrow ridge, while the land around it drops away quickly on all sides. These steep slopes limit expansion and require careful placement of every structure, as there is little margin for error in how the land is used. The valleys below add to this sense of separation. They are not shallow or easily crossed, but deep and winding, carved over time by the movement of water and the shifting of the earth. Looking down from the ridge, the distance to the valley floor is significant, creating a visual and physical barrier between the city and the lower landscape. This separation contributes to the isolation of Machu Picchu, making it a place that is not easily reached or accessed without deliberate effort. The surrounding terrain does not simply frame the city, but actively shapes how it exists within the region. Far below the city, the Urubamba River flows through the valley, following a curved path that wraps around the base of the mountains. This river is not a small or gentle stream, but a powerful force that has played a major role in shaping the landscape. Over time, it has carved its way through the rock, creating the deep valley that now surrounds Machu Picchu. The presence of the river adds another layer of natural protection, as it creates a boundary that is difficult to cross. At the same time, it connects the region to a wider network of water and movement, linking the mountains to areas beyond. The position of the river relative to the city is important. While it flows far below, it still influences the environment above. Moisture from the river contributes to the formation of clouds that move through the mountains, and the valley it has created affects how weather patterns develop in the area. The river is both a physical feature and part of a larger system that shapes the conditions in which the city exists. Its presence is constant, even when it is not directly visible from every part of the site. The region around Machu Picchu experiences frequent rainfall, which plays a central role in shaping the environment. Rain does not fall lightly or occasionally. Instead, it can be steady and persistent, especially during certain times of the year. This constant presence of water affects the soil, the vegetation, and the stability of the slopes. It creates conditions where the ground can become saturated, increasing the risk of movement within the landscape. Rainfall is not simply a background feature, but an active force that must be considered in how the city functions. Cloud cover is also a regular part of the environment. The combination of elevation, moisture, and temperature differences leads to the formation of clouds that move through the mountains. These clouds can settle around the ridge where Machu Picchu is located, reducing visibility and creating a shifting atmosphere. At times, the city is clearly visible against the surrounding peaks. At other times, it becomes partially hidden, with only sections of the structures visible through the mist. This changing visibility is not random, but part of the natural cycle of the region. The presence of both rainfall and cloud cover contributes to the overall moisture of the environment. This moisture supports plant growth, allowing vegetation to thrive across the slopes and within the spaces around the city. At the same time, it creates challenges related to stability. Wet soil is more likely to move, and water flowing across the land can carry material with it, gradually changing the shape of the slopes. These conditions require careful attention when building and maintaining structures in such an environment. The terrain itself is not fixed or entirely stable. The steep slopes increase the risk of landslides, especially when the soil becomes saturated with water. Landslides occur when sections of the slope lose their ability to hold together, causing material to move downward. In a region like this, where rainfall is frequent and the ground is uneven, this risk is always present. It is not a rare event, but a natural part of how the landscape changes over time. Any settlement built in this area must take this into account. Erosion is another ongoing process that affects the region. As water moves across the surface of the land, it gradually removes small amounts of soil and rock. Over long periods, this can alter the shape of the terrain, deepening valleys and reshaping slopes. Erosion works slowly but consistently, making it an important factor in how the landscape develops. For a city like Machu Picchu, which is built directly into this terrain, understanding and managing erosion is essential for long-term stability. These environmental conditions create a setting that is both challenging and dynamic. The combination of steep slopes, deep valleys, flowing water, frequent rainfall, and shifting clouds means that the landscape is constantly changing. It is not a place where structures can be placed without careful thought. Instead, every decision must consider how the environment will respond over time. The city must be able to exist within these conditions, rather than attempt to resist them entirely. The need for careful planning becomes clear when considering all of these factors together. The location of Machu Picchu was not simply chosen for its appearance or isolation, but with an understanding of how the environment functions. The ridge provides a foundation, but it is surrounded by forces that can affect stability. Water moves through the system in different forms, from rainfall to river flow. The ground itself can shift, influenced by both natural processes and external conditions. Building in such a setting requires more than physical effort. It requires knowledge of the land, the weather, and the patterns that shape the region over time. The environment is not predictable in a simple way, but follows cycles and processes that must be observed and understood. The placement of the city within this landscape suggests that these patterns were recognized and considered during its development. As we continue, we will move into the origins of the people who built Machu Picchu, exploring how the Inca developed the knowledge, organization, and resources needed to create a city within such a demanding environment. Machu Picchu was built during the height of the Inca Empire in the 15th century, a period when the empire had expanded across large areas of South America and developed the organization needed to manage distant regions. This was not a small or isolated culture working on a limited scale. The Inca had established a system that connected mountains, valleys, forests, and coastlines into a unified structure, allowing resources, labor, and knowledge to move between different parts of the empire. The construction of a city like Machu Picchu reflects this level of coordination, where planning extended beyond a single location and drew from a wider network. The Inca were known for their ability to build in environments that presented significant challenges. Rather than focusing only on areas that were easy to develop, they worked within landscapes that required adaptation and understanding. Mountains, in particular, were not avoided. Instead, they were used as part of the structure of their settlements. This approach meant that cities were often shaped by the land itself, with construction methods designed to match the conditions of each location. Machu Picchu is an example of this approach, where the natural ridge and surrounding terrain were incorporated into the overall design. The expansion of the Inca Empire made it possible to support projects that required large amounts of labor and resources. As the empire grew, it brought together different communities, each contributing skills and materials that could be used in construction. This system allowed for the movement of workers across regions, enabling large-scale building efforts even in remote areas. Machu Picchu, positioned high in the mountains, would have required this kind of organization, as materials and labor needed to be directed to a location that was not easily accessible. Within this broader system, Machu Picchu was not an isolated development, but part of a network of settlements that served different roles. The empire included administrative centers, agricultural zones, religious sites, and strategic locations that helped maintain control over the land. Each of these settlements was connected through a system of roads that allowed for communication and movement. These connections meant that even a remote city like Machu Picchu was linked to the wider structure of the empire, receiving support and contributing to the system as a whole. The ability to construct in difficult environments was supported by knowledge that had been developed over time. The Inca understood how to work with stone, how to shape the land, and how to manage natural forces such as water and gravity. This knowledge was not limited to a single group of builders, but shared across the empire, allowing techniques to be applied in different locations. At Machu Picchu, this is reflected in the way the city fits into the ridge, using the natural form of the land as part of its foundation. The resources required for construction were also part of the wider system. Stone had to be selected, shaped, and transported, often across uneven terrain. This process required planning at multiple stages, from identifying suitable materials to organizing the labor needed to move them. In a mountainous region, this becomes more complex, as paths are limited and conditions can change. The successful construction of Machu Picchu suggests that these challenges were managed through a combination of planning, coordination, and experience. The presence of Machu Picchu within the empire indicates that it held a level of importance that justified the effort required to build it. Constructing a city in such a location would not have been undertaken without purpose. While the exact role of Machu Picchu is still studied, its existence within the network of the empire shows that it was part of a larger system of organization. It was not separate from the empire, but integrated into it through roads, communication, and shared practices. The structure of the Inca Empire allowed for consistency in how settlements were developed. While each location had its own characteristics, certain principles were applied across different regions. These included the use of stone construction, the adaptation of buildings to the landscape, and the organization of space into functional areas. At Machu Picchu, these principles are visible in the layout and construction methods, showing how the site fits within the broader patterns of Inca design. The scale of the empire also meant that knowledge could be refined over time. As new areas were incorporated, techniques could be adjusted and improved based on experience. This process of development allowed the Inca to handle increasingly complex projects, including those in challenging environments. Machu Picchu represents a point where these accumulated skills were applied in a focused way, resulting in a city that reflects both experience and precision. The organization required to build Machu Picchu would have involved coordination between different levels of the empire. Decisions about location, design, and construction would need to align with broader goals, whether related to governance, resource management, or cultural practices. This coordination ensured that the site was not only built effectively, but also integrated into the existing systems that supported the empire, As part of the wider network, Machu Picchu would have been connected to other settlements through the movement of people and information. Messengers traveled along the road system, carrying messages that allowed different parts of the empire to remain in contact. This communication network supported the functioning of distant locations, ensuring that even remote sites were linked to central structures. Machu Picchu, despite its isolation, was part of this flow of information. The development of the Inca Empire created the conditions necessary for projects like Machu Picchu to exist. Without the scale, organization, and shared knowledge of the empire, building in such a location would have been significantly more difficult. The city reflects not only the environment in which it was placed, but also the system that made its construction possible. As we continue, we will move into the methods used to construct Machu Picchu, exploring how stone was shaped, how structures were assembled, and how these techniques allowed the city to remain stable within a challenging environment. The construction of Machu Picchu begins with the use of stone, a material chosen not only for its availability, but for its strength and durability within a challenging environment. The city was built using large stone blocks that were carefully selected and shaped to fit together with precision. These stones were not placed randomly or stacked without planning. Each one was worked into a specific form so that it could connect closely with the stones around it, creating a surface that appears continuous and stable. The result is a set of structures that feel solid and unified, rather than assembled from separate pieces. Shaping these stones required time, effort, and skill. The process involved cutting and refining each block so that its edges aligned with those of neighboring stones. This was not a simple task, especially given the size and weight of many of the blocks used in construction. The builders had to consider how each stone would sit within the structure, adjusting its shape until it fit securely in place. This careful shaping allowed the stones to connect without gaps, reducing movement and increasing stability. One of the most distinctive aspects of this construction method is the absence of mortar. Unlike many other building techniques, there is no binding material holding the stones together. Instead, the strength of the structure comes from the way the stones are fitted. Each block rests against another with such precision that the contact between them provides the necessary support. The weight of the stones presses them together, creating a stable arrangement that does not rely on additional substances to remain intact. This approach to construction has important effects on how the buildings respond to their environment. Machu Picchu is located in a region where earthquakes occur, meaning that the ground can shift unexpectedly. In structures that rely on rigid connections, such movement can lead to cracks or collapse. The stone fitting technique used at Machu Picchu allows for a different response. When the ground moves, the stones can shift slightly, adjusting to the change rather than resisting it. Once the movement stops, they settle back into position, maintaining the overall structure. This flexibility is not accidental, but a direct result of how the stones are shaped and placed. By avoiding mortar and relying on precise alignment, the builders created structures that can adapt to small movements without losing their form. This is especially important in a mountainous region where the forces acting on the ground are constant and cannot be controlled. The construction method works with these forces, allowing the buildings to remain stable over long periods of time. In addition to responding to earthquakes, the construction techniques used at Machu Picchu also reflect an understanding of the land itself. The city was not built on a flat, prepared surface, but on a ridge, with uneven ground and natural variation in height. Rather than forcing the land into a uniform shape, the builders adapted their designs to match the terrain. Structures were positioned where the ground provided support, and foundations were adjusted to account for differences in elevation. This adaptation can be seen in the way walls follow the contours of the land. Instead of straight lines that ignore the shape of the terrain, the structures align with it, creating a sense of integration between the built environment and the natural landscape. This approach reduces stress on the structures as they are not working against the land, but moving with it. The result is a city that appears to grow out of the ridge rather than sit on top of it. The process of construction would have required coordination among those involved. Stones had to be selected, shaped, and placed in a sequence that ensured stability at each stage. This means that planning was essential, as each part of the structure depended on the placement of the stones around it. The builders needed to understand how individual elements would contribute to the overall strength of the structure, ensuring that each addition supported what was already in place. The labor involved in this process was significant. Moving and shaping large stones in a mountainous environment requires both physical effort and organization. Workers would need to transport materials across uneven terrain, position them accurately, and adjust them as needed to achieve the required fit. This level of effort suggests that construction was not only a technical process, but also a coordinated activity that brought together different roles and skills. The use of precise stone fitting also contributes to the appearance of the city. The surfaces of the walls are smooth and continuous, with the joints between stones carefully aligned. This creates a visual effect where the individual blocks become less noticeable and the structure appears as a unified whole. The design is both functional and refined, showing attention to detail in how the buildings were constructed. This combination of precision, adaptation, and coordination results in structures that have remained stable over time. The techniques used at Machu Picchu allow the city to exist within an environment that includes shifting ground and changing conditions. Rather than relying on rigid systems that could fail under pressure, the construction methods provide flexibility and resilience. The ability to build in this way reflects a broader understanding of materials and environment. Stone is used not only for its strength, but for how it can be shaped and arranged to respond to external forces. The land is not treated as an obstacle, but as a foundation that guides how structures are placed. Each decision in the construction process contributes to the overall stability of the city. Machu Picchu stands as an example of how careful planning and skilled execution can produce structures that endure within difficult conditions. The stone blocks, shaped and fitted with precision, form a system that supports itself without additional binding materials. The adaptation to the terrain ensures that the buildings align with the natural form of the ridge, reducing stress and increasing stability. As we continue, we will move into the layout of the city, exploring how different areas were organized, how spaces were divided, and how this arrangement supported both practical use and symbolic meaning within Machu Picchu. The layout of Machu Picchu was not random or unplanned, but carefully organized into different zones, each serving a specific purpose within the city. This division of space allowed the settlement to function efficiently, with areas dedicated to particular activities arranged in relation to one another. The placement of these zones reflects both practical needs and a broader sense of order, where the structure of the city supports how it was used on a daily basis. Within this layout, agricultural terraces were positioned along the slopes of the ridge, forming a visible outer layer that follows the natural shape of the land. These terraces create a series of stepped levels that move downward from the central areas of the city. Their placement along the edges makes use of space that would otherwise be difficult to occupy, while also forming a boundary that defines the limits of the built environment. The terraces are not separate from the rest of the city, but integrated into its overall structure, connecting the outer slopes to the areas above. Closer to the central part of Machu Picchu, residential areas were arranged in a way that allowed for access to both shared spaces and essential structures. These living areas consist of stone buildings positioned with consideration for movement, proximity, and the natural contours of the ridge. The arrangement of these structures suggests a balance between individual spaces and the need for connection within the community. Paths and open areas link the buildings together, allowing for movement between different parts of the city without disrupting the overall layout. The placement of residential areas near central structures indicates a level of planning that considers daily activity and accessibility. Living spaces are not isolated or scattered without pattern. Instead, they are positioned in relation to the key areas of the city, allowing residents to move easily between their homes and the places where work, gathering, or other activities occur. This organization supports a consistent flow of movement, reducing the need to navigate difficult terrain unnecessarily. In addition to residential and agricultural zones, Machu Picchu includes areas dedicated to temples and ceremonial spaces. These structures are placed in prominent positions within the layout, often located where they are clearly visible or set apart from other buildings. Their placement suggests importance, both in terms of function and meaning. By positioning these spaces in elevated or central locations, the layout reinforces their role within the city, making them a focal point within the overall design. The distinction between different zones is not marked by rigid boundaries, but by transitions in the arrangement of structures and spaces. Moving from one area to another involves passing through changes in elevation, structure density, or orientation. These transitions help define the purpose of each zone without separating them completely. The city remains connected, with each area contributing to the overall function of the settlement. The layout also reflects the need to work within the constraints of the terrain. The ridge does not provide a wide or uniform surface, so the organization of space must adapt to its shape. Buildings and terraces follow the natural lines of the land, creating a layout that curves and adjusts rather than forcing a strict geometric pattern. This approach allows the city to maintain stability while making use of available space. The positioning of structures within each zone takes into account both the physical environment and the intended use of the space. In residential areas, buildings are arranged to provide shelter and accessibility. In agricultural zones, terraces are aligned with the slope to maximize usable land. In ceremonial areas, structures are placed to stand out within the landscape. Each decision contributes to a layout that is both functional and structured. The relationship between these zones creates a system where different activities can take place without interfering with one another. Agricultural work can occur along the slopes, while residential life continues closer to the center, and ceremonial activities take place in designated areas. This separation of functions helps maintain order within the city, allowing it to operate efficiently despite the limitations of its location. At the same time, the layout maintains a sense of unity. The zones are not isolated from each other, but connected through pathways and shared spaces. Movement between areas is continuous, supported by the design of the city. This connection ensures that all parts of the settlement remain accessible, allowing for interaction and coordination across different zones. The placement of temples and ceremonial structures within the layout adds a layer of meaning to the organization of space. These structures are not only functional, but also symbolic, influencing how the city is experienced. Their prominent positions draw attention and create focal points that shape movement and perception within the city. This integration of symbolic elements into the layout shows that the organization of space was not based solely on practical considerations. The overall layout of Machu Picchu reflects a balance between structure and adaptation. The division into zones provides order, while the alignment with the terrain allows for flexibility. The result is a city that is organized without being rigid, where each area serves a purpose and contributes to the functioning of the whole. This approach to urban layout demonstrates an understanding of how to manage space within a limited and challenging environment. By dividing the city into zones and positioning them carefully, the builders created a system that supports both daily life and broader functions. The arrangement of agricultural, residential, and ceremonial areas ensures that the city can operate as a complete and connected settlement. As we continue, we will move into the agricultural system of Machu Picchu, examining how the terraces functioned, how crops were grown in this environment, and how food production was maintained on the slopes of the mountain. The agricultural system of Machu Picchu was designed to make use of a landscape that would otherwise be difficult to farm. The steep slopes of the mountain do not provide natural flat ground for growing crops, which means that the land must be shaped before it can be used effectively. To solve this, the builders created a series of terraces that step down the sides of the ridge. These terraces form flat surfaces supported by stone walls, allowing soil to be held in place and used for cultivation. Each terrace is carefully constructed to create a stable platform. The stone walls that support them are not only barriers, but part of a system that manages both weight and pressure from the soil above. Behind these walls, layers of material are arranged to support drainage and maintain stability. This structure allows the terraces to remain intact even when exposed to heavy rainfall, which is common in the region. Without this system, soil would move downhill, making farming difficult or impossible over time. The terraces also play a key role in preventing soil erosion. On a steep slope, water can flow quickly across the surface, carrying soil with it and gradually wearing away the land. By breaking the slope into a series of steps, the terraces slow the movement of water. Instead of rushing downward, water is absorbed and distributed more evenly across each level. This reduces the force acting on the soil and helps keep it in place, allowing crops to grow in a more stable environment. In addition to controlling erosion, the terraces help manage water flow across the agricultural areas. Rainwater does not collect in one place or move unpredictably across the slope. Instead, it is guided across the terraces in a controlled way, ensuring that each level receives enough moisture without becoming oversaturated. This balance is important, as too much water can weaken the soil, while too little can limit crop growth. The design of the terraces allows for a consistent distribution of water across the farming areas. The crops grown at Machu Picchu included maize and potatoes, both of which are well suited to the conditions of the Andes. These crops can adapt to variations in temperature and altitude, making them reliable choices for cultivation in a mountainous environment. The presence of these crops suggests that the agricultural system was designed not only for functionality, but also for sustainability, providing a steady source of food for those living in the city. Growing crops in this environment requires attention to both soil and climate. The terraces create controlled spaces where soil can be managed more effectively than on an open slope. This allows for adjustments in how crops are planted and maintained, improving the chances of successful growth. The combination of stable platforms and suitable crops supports a system where food production can continue despite the challenges of the environment. Irrigation channels were used to distribute water across the terraces, ensuring that crops received the moisture they needed. These channels guide water from sources within the landscape and direct it along the terraces in a measured way. This system allows water to reach different areas without relying solely on rainfall, providing a level of control over how water is used. The channels are integrated into the terraces, forming part of a larger network that supports agricultural activity. The use of irrigation also helps maintain consistency in crop growth. In an environment where rainfall can vary, having a controlled system ensures that plants receive water even when conditions change. This reduces the risk of crop failure and supports a more reliable food supply. The presence of irrigation channels shows that the agricultural system was not dependent on natural conditions alone, but included methods to manage those conditions. The terraces, crops, and irrigation channels work together as a connected system. Each element supports the others, creating a balance that allows farming to take place on a steep mountain slope. The terraces provide structure, the crops are suited to the environment, and the irrigation channels manage water distribution. This combination creates a system that is both stable and adaptable, capable of functioning under changing conditions. The design of this agricultural system reflects an understanding of how to work with the land rather than against it. Instead of attempting to remove the challenges of the slope, the builders used those conditions as part of the solution. The terraces follow the natural shape of the mountain. The water is guided rather than forced, and the crops are chosen based on their ability to thrive in the environment. This approach allows the system to remain effective over time. Food production within Machu Picchu was not an isolated activity, but part of the overall function of the city. The ability to grow crops locally reduces the need to transport food from distant areas, supporting the sustainability of the settlement. At the same time, the agricultural system is integrated into the layout of the city, connecting the slopes to the central areas and contributing to the structure of the environment. The terraces also influence how the landscape appears. They create a stepped pattern along the slopes, making the mountain itself part of the built environment. This visual effect reflects the integration of natural and constructed elements, where the land is shaped but not separated from its original form. The result is a landscape that is both functional and consistent with its surroundings. As we continue, we will move into the water management system of Machu Picchu, exploring how water was sourced, directed, and controlled throughout the city to support both daily life and the stability of its structures. Water management at Machu Picchu was essential for the survival and stability of the city, as it provided a consistent supply for daily use, while also protecting the structures from damage caused by excess moisture. The system begins with natural springs located near the site, which serve as a reliable source of fresh water. These springs are not seasonal or unpredictable, but provide a steady flow that can be directed and controlled. The presence of these water sources made it possible to establish a settlement in a location that would otherwise depend entirely on rainfall. From these springs, water is guided through a network of channels that move it across different areas of the city. These channels are carefully constructed to control the direction and speed of the flow, ensuring that water reaches the places where it is needed. The design of these pathways allows water to move steadily without becoming turbulent or uncontrolled. By guiding water in this way, the system supports both daily use and the overall balance of the environment within the city. The channels are integrated into the layout of Machu Picchu, connecting different sections and providing access to water in multiple locations. This distribution means that water is not concentrated in a single area, but available throughout the settlement. The placement of the channels reflects planning that considers how people move through the city and how water can be accessed without disrupting other activities. This integration allows water to become part of the daily structure of the city rather than a separate or isolated element. In addition to supplying water, the system also includes features designed to manage excess rainfall. The region experiences frequent and sometimes heavy rain, which can create problems if water is allowed to collect or flow without control. To address this, drainage systems are built into the city, allowing water to pass through and away from structures. These systems prevent the accumulation of water that could weaken foundations or cause instability in the soil. Drainage is especially important in a location with steep slopes, where water can move quickly and carry material with it. If not managed, this movement can lead to erosion or damage to the terraces and buildings. The drainage systems at Machu Picchu work by guiding water away from critical areas, allowing it to move through designated paths rather than across open surfaces. This reduces the impact of heavy rainfall and helps maintain the stability of the site. The combination of water supply and drainage creates a balanced system where water is both used and controlled. Fresh water is directed to areas where it supports daily life, while excess water is removed in a way that prevents damage. This balance is essential in an environment where water is both necessary and potentially destructive. The system ensures that water remains a resource rather than a risk. Water at Machu Picchu was used for practical purposes, including drinking, cooking, and cleaning. Access to fresh water is a basic requirement for any settlement, and the presence of a controlled supply allows for consistent daily activity. The placement of water channels and access points makes it possible for residents to collect and use water without traveling long distances or relying on uncertain sources. This contributes to the overall efficiency of the city. In addition to practical use, water also played a role in ceremonial activities. The presence of water within the city allows it to be incorporated into spaces that may have held symbolic or cultural significance. While the exact details of these practices are studied and interpreted, the inclusion of water in key areas suggests that it was not only a physical resource, but also part of the way the city was experienced. This dual role adds another layer to the importance of water management within the settlement. The design of the water system reflects an understanding of how water behaves in a mountainous environment. Water flows downward, follows paths of least resistance, and can change direction based on the shape of the land. By constructing channels that guide this movement, the builders created a system that works with natural processes rather than attempting to control them completely. This approach reduces strain on the structures and allows the system to function more reliably over time. The consistency of the water supply is also important. Natural springs provide a steady source, reducing dependence on rainfall alone. This ensures that water is available even during periods when rain is less frequent. At the same time, the system is capable of handling increased water during periods of heavy rainfall, directing it away from areas where it could cause damage. This adaptability allows the system to function under different conditions. The placement of water channels and drainage pathways within the city shows a level of planning that connects multiple aspects of the environment. Water is not treated as a separate element, but as part of the overall structure of Machu Picchu. It moves through the city in a controlled way, supporting both the people who live there and the stability of the buildings themselves. This integrated approach to water management contributes to the long-term preservation of the site. By controlling both the supply and removal of water, the system reduces the risk of damage caused by moisture. Structures remain stable, terraces retain their form, and the overall layout of the city is maintained. The effectiveness of this system is evident in how much of Machu Picchu remains intact, despite the environmental challenges it faces. The ability to manage water in this way reflects a broader understanding of the relationship between natural forces and built structures. Water can shape the land, influence the stability of buildings, and affect daily life. By designing a system that accounts for these factors, the builders created a settlement that could exist within its environment without being overwhelmed by it. As we continue, we will move into the religious structures of Machu Picchu, exploring how temples were designed, how they were positioned within the city, and how they connect to natural cycles and the surrounding landscape. Religious structures at Machu Picchu form an important part of the city, reflecting how belief and environment were closely connected within the settlement. These structures are not separate from the rest of the city, but integrated into its layout, positioned in ways that give them both visibility and significance. Temples are placed where they can be clearly seen, often elevated or located within central areas, reinforcing their role within the overall structure of the city. Their presence shapes how space is experienced, drawing attention and guiding movement toward key points. The Temple of the Sun is one of the most notable examples of these religious structures, positioned in a way that connects it to both the physical and celestial environment. Its design includes curved stonework and carefully placed openings that allow light to enter at specific times. This alignment with astronomical events suggests that the structure was used to observe and mark natural cycles, such as the movement of the sun across the sky. The positioning of the temple reflects an understanding of how light changes over time and how these changes can be incorporated into the design of a structure. The connection between the temple and astronomical events is not accidental. The movement of the sun, the changing length of days, and the shifting patterns of light all follow predictable cycles. By aligning structures with these cycles, the builders created spaces that reflect the passage of time in a visible way. This allows natural events to become part of the experience of the city, linking daily life to larger patterns that extend beyond the immediate environment. Religious practices at Machu Picchu were closely linked to these natural cycles. The observation of the sun and other elements of the environment would have been part of a broader system of belief that connected people to the world around them. The placement of temples and ceremonial spaces suggests that these locations were used for activities that recognized and responded to these cycles. The structures themselves provide a setting where these practices could take place, supported by their alignment and position. Stone plays a significant role in these religious structures, not only as a building material, but as a medium for symbolic expression. The shaping of stones in temples is often more refined, with smoother surfaces and more precise alignment. This attention to detail distinguishes these structures from others within the city, indicating their importance. The use of stone in this way reflects both practical skill and a deliberate effort to create spaces that carry meaning. The symbolic use of stone extends beyond the material itself to the way structures interact with their surroundings. Temples are often positioned in relation to natural features such as mountains or open spaces, creating a connection between the built environment and the landscape. This positioning allows the structures to frame views or align with specific elements of the environment, reinforcing the relationship between the city and its setting. The connection between nature and belief is a central aspect of the religious structures at Machu Picchu. The environment is not treated as separate from spiritual practices, but as part of them. The movement of light, the shape of the land, and the presence of natural features all contribute to how these spaces are used and understood. This integration creates a system where the physical and symbolic aspects of the city are closely linked. The placement of temples within the city also influences how people move through the space. By locating these structures in prominent positions, the layout encourages movement toward them, making them focal points within the settlement. Paths and open areas lead toward these locations, allowing for access while maintaining their distinction from other parts of the city. This arrangement supports both practical use and symbolic importance. The design of these structures reflects a balance between precision and adaptation. While the alignment with astronomical events requires careful planning, the construction still follows the contours of the land. This ensures that the structures remain stable while also fulfilling their intended purpose. The combination of these elements shows that the builders were able to integrate different considerations into a single design. The role of religious structures within Machu Picchu extends beyond individual buildings. Together, they form a network of spaces that contribute to the identity of the city. Each structure adds to the overall pattern, creating a system where belief, observation, and environment are connected. This network supports activities that are both regular and cyclical, tied to the movement of natural elements. The presence of these structures also reflects the importance of belief within the community. The effort required to construct and position them indicates that they were not secondary features, but central to how the city functioned. Their integration into the layout ensures that they remain visible and accessible, reinforcing their role within daily life and broader practices. The alignment of structures with natural cycles creates a connection between time and space within the city. As light enters the temples at specific moments, it marks changes that occur beyond the immediate environment. This allows the city to reflect patterns that extend across the landscape and into the sky, linking the settlement to a wider system. The combination of placement, design, and alignment makes the religious structures at Machu Picchu an essential part of the city. They demonstrate how belief can be expressed through architecture, using the environment as both a setting and a guide. The structures are not isolated, but part of a larger system that connects different aspects of the city into a unified whole. As we continue, we will move into daily life within Machu Picchu, exploring how people lived, worked, and organized their activities within the spaces created by this carefully planned city. Daily life at Machu Picchu took place within a setting that was carefully organized to support both routine activity and the challenges of the surrounding environment. The people who lived in the city occupied stone buildings that were designed to provide shelter while fitting into the natural shape of the land. These buildings were constructed with stone walls and topped with thatched roofs, creating spaces that offered protection from changing weather conditions. The materials used were suited to the environment, allowing the structures to remain stable while also providing a level of comfort for those living within them. The design of these residential buildings reflects a balance between simplicity and practicality. The stone walls provide strength and durability, while the thatched roofs offer coverage from rain and sun. Openings within the structures allow for ventilation, helping to regulate the interior environment. These features work together to create living spaces that respond to the conditions of the mountains, where temperatures can shift and weather patterns can change quickly. Daily activities within the city were shaped by both the environment and the organization of the settlement. Farming was an important part of life, supported by the terraces that provided space for growing crops. This work would involve preparing soil, planting, and maintaining the fields to ensure consistent food production. The agricultural system required regular attention, as the balance of water and soil needed to be maintained to support growth. This connection between daily activity and the environment meant that routines were closely linked to the conditions of the land. In addition to farming, construction and maintenance played a role in daily life. The structures and systems within Machu Picchu required ongoing care to remain effective. This included maintaining terraces, ensuring that pathways remained usable, and supporting the systems that managed water and stability. The need for maintenance reflects the dynamic nature of the environment, where structures must be supported over time rather than left unchanged. The population of Machu Picchu was relatively small compared to larger urban centers within the Inca Empire. This smaller scale influenced how the city functioned, creating a setting where activities could be managed within a more contained space. A smaller population allows for closer coordination between different aspects of daily life, as fewer people need to share resources and space. This contributes to a sense of organization, where movement and activity can be more easily directed. Resource management was an important part of maintaining daily life within the city. Food, water, and materials needed to be used efficiently to support the population. The agricultural system provided a source of food, but this supply still required careful handling to ensure that it lasted and met the needs of those living there. Storage areas within the city were used to hold supplies, protecting them from environmental conditions and ensuring that they remained available over time. The management of resources also includes how materials are used within the city. Stone, as a primary building material, needed to be maintained, and any damage addressed to prevent larger issues. The organization of labor within the city would have supported these tasks, ensuring that different responsibilities were managed in a coordinated way. This level of organization allows the city to function effectively, despite the limitations of its location. Life within Machu Picchu was structured around a combination of work and routine activities. Farming, maintenance, and other tasks would form part of a daily pattern that supports the functioning of the city. At the same time, the layout of the city allows for movement between different areas, connecting residential spaces to agricultural and ceremonial zones. This connection ensures that daily life is not isolated within one part of the city, but spread across its different sections. The environment influences how these routines are carried out. Weather conditions, such as rainfall or cloud cover, can affect when and how activities take place. The need to respond to these conditions means that daily life is not fixed, but adaptable. This adaptability is supported by the design of the city, which provides spaces that can be used under different conditions. The presence of both work and structured routines creates a rhythm within the city. Activities are repeated and adjusted over time, creating patterns that support stability and continuity. This rhythm is not imposed from outside, but develops from the interaction between people and their environment. The design of the city supports this interaction, allowing daily life to take place in a way that is consistent with the surrounding landscape. The scale of the population also affects how resources are shared and managed. With fewer people, there is a greater need for coordination, as each part of the system contributes to the overall functioning of the city. This coordination ensures that resources are not wasted and that the needs of the population are met. The organization of the city reflects this need, with spaces arranged to support efficient movement and use. The integration of residential areas with other parts of the city allows for a connected form of daily life. People move between their living spaces and the areas where they work or gather, creating a continuous flow of activity. This movement is supported by the layout, which provides pathways and connections that link different zones together. The result is a city where daily life is both structured and adaptable. The combination of housing, work, and resource management creates a system that supports the population within a challenging environment. Each element contributes to the stability of the city, ensuring that it can function over time. The design of Machu Picchu allows daily life to take place within the constraints of the landscape, using organization and planning to maintain balance. As we continue, we will move into the infrastructure of Machu Picchu, examining how pathways, staircases, and storage areas were designed to support movement, organization, and the overall function of the city. The infrastructure of Machu Picchu supports how movement, storage, and organization function within the city, allowing different areas to remain connected despite the challenges of the terrain. The landscape is steep and uneven, which means that movement cannot rely on open or flat routes. Instead, pathways are built to follow the natural contours of the ridge, creating routes that link different parts of the city in a controlled and stable way. These pathways are carefully placed to connect residential areas, agricultural terraces, and ceremonial spaces. They do not cut directly across the land, but follow lines that make movement possible without disrupting the structure of the terrain. This approach reduces the strain on the ground and allows the pathways to remain stable over time. The result is a network of routes that supports consistent movement throughout the city, even in a complex environment. In areas where the slope becomes steeper, staircases are used to allow vertical movement between different levels. These staircases are built directly into the terrain, using stone to create steps that follow the natural rise and fall of the land. Each step is positioned to provide support and balance, allowing people to move up and down the slopes without losing stability. The use of staircases ensures that all parts of the city remain accessible, even when the terrain changes sharply. The placement of staircases reflects an understanding of how people move within the space. They are located where changes in elevation require a controlled transition, allowing movement to continue smoothly between different areas. This prevents the need for longer or more difficult routes, making it easier to navigate the city. The integration of staircases into the overall layout ensures that vertical movement is as organized as horizontal movement. Buildings within Machu Picchu are also positioned to support the infrastructure of the city. Rather than being placed without pattern, they are arranged in relation to pathways and open spaces. This placement allows for clear movement between structures, ensuring that access is maintained without obstruction. The organization of buildings contributes to the overall flow of the city, supporting both daily activity and the movement of resources. The relationship between buildings and pathways creates a system where space is used efficiently. Open areas are maintained where needed, allowing for movement and access, while structures are placed in positions that do not interfere with these routes. This balance ensures that the city remains functional, with each part supporting the others. The infrastructure is not separate from the buildings, but integrated into how they are arranged. Storage areas play an important role within this system, providing spaces where food and supplies can be kept. These areas are designed to protect materials from environmental conditions, such as moisture and temperature changes. By storing resources in designated locations, the city is able to manage its supplies more effectively, ensuring that they remain available when needed. The placement of storage areas within the infrastructure allows for easy access while maintaining organization. The presence of storage spaces also reflects the need for planning within the city. Resources are not used immediately, but managed over time, requiring spaces where they can be held and protected. This supports the stability of the settlement, allowing it to function without constant reliance on immediate supply. The infrastructure provides the framework for this management, connecting storage areas to the rest of the city. The integration of pathways, staircases, buildings, and storage areas creates a system that supports both movement and organization. Each element contributes to the overall function of the city, ensuring that it remains accessible and efficient. The infrastructure allows people to move through the space, access resources, and maintain the structures that support daily life. The design of this infrastructure reflects an understanding of the limitations of the environment. The terrain cannot be changed easily, so the infrastructure adapts to it. Pathways follow the land, staircases respond to elevation, and buildings are positioned to fit within the available space. This approach ensures that the city remains stable, while still providing the connections needed for it to function. The system also supports coordination within the city. Movement between areas is predictable and structured, allowing for activities to be organized without confusion. This is especially important in a setting where space is limited and the terrain presents challenges. By providing clear routes and connections, the infrastructure supports the overall organization of the settlement. The durability of the infrastructure contributes to the long-term stability of Machu Picchu. Stone pathways and staircases are able to withstand the conditions of the environment, including rainfall and shifting ground. This durability ensures that the routes remain usable over time, supporting continued movement within the city. The strength of these elements reflects the care taken in their construction. The infrastructure also influences how the city is experienced. Movement through the pathways and staircases creates a sequence of spaces, guiding people from one area to another. This sequence shapes how the city is navigated, providing a sense of order within the landscape. The design ensures that movement is not random, but follows a pattern that supports both function and organization. The combination of these elements results in a system that allows Machu Picchu to operate as a connected settlement, despite the challenges of its location. Pathways link different areas, staircases manage changes in elevation, buildings support the organization of space, and storage areas ensure the availability of resources. Together, they form an infrastructure that supports the daily function of the city. As we continue, we will move into the environmental challenges faced by Machu Picchu, examining how factors such as rainfall, landslides, and earthquakes influence the design and stability of the city. The environment surrounding Machu Picchu presents a set of challenges that are constant and unavoidable, shaping how the city exists within the Andes Mountains. One of the most significant of these challenges is heavy rainfall, which affects the land throughout much of the year. Rain does not fall lightly or occasionally, but can be sustained over long periods, saturating the soil and increasing the movement of water across the slopes. This consistent presence of moisture influences the stability of the ground, requiring awareness of how water interacts with both soil and stone. When rain falls on steep terrain, it does not remain in place. Instead, it moves quickly downhill, following the natural slope of the land. This movement can carry soil with it, gradually wearing away the surface and altering the shape of the terrain. Over time, this process can weaken the ground, making it less stable and more likely to shift. In a location like Machu Picchu, where the city is built directly into a ridge, this effect becomes especially important, as any change in the stability of the ground can influence the structures above it. The steep slopes of the region increase the risk of landslides, which occur when sections of the ground lose their ability to hold together. This can happen when soil becomes saturated with water, reducing its cohesion and allowing it to move downward. Landslides are not rare events in mountainous environments, but part of the natural process of change within the landscape. The presence of these risks means that any settlement built in this area must account for the possibility of movement within the ground. The potential for landslides affects how the land can be used. Areas that appear stable may still be subject to gradual shifts over time, making it difficult to rely on the ground without considering these changes. The combination of steep slopes and heavy rainfall creates conditions where the balance of the soil is constantly being tested. This dynamic environment requires ongoing awareness of how the land behaves under different conditions. In addition to rainfall and landslides, earthquakes are a regular feature of the Andes region. The movement of the earth beneath the surface can cause sudden shifts in the ground, affecting anything built upon it. These movements can vary in intensity, but even smaller shifts can influence the stability of structures. The presence of seismic activity adds another layer of complexity to the environment, as it introduces forces that cannot be predicted with precision. Earthquakes affect both the ground and the structures placed upon it. When the earth moves, it can create stress within buildings, especially if they are not designed to respond to such movement. In a location where earthquakes are expected, this becomes a continuous challenge that must be considered in how the city is built and maintained. The ground is not fixed, and the structures must exist within this condition. The combination of rainfall, landslides, and earthquakes creates an environment where stability is not guaranteed. Each of these factors interacts with the others, increasing the complexity of the conditions. Rainfall can weaken the soil, making landslides more likely. Earthquakes can disturb the ground, affecting areas already influenced by water. Together, these forces create a landscape that is constantly changing, requiring careful attention to how it is used. The challenges of this environment extend beyond individual events. They are part of a continuous process that shapes the land over time. The slopes do not remain unchanged, and the ground is not static. Instead, the environment is active, with forces that gradually alter its structure. This ongoing change means that any settlement must be able to exist within a shifting landscape. The presence of these environmental challenges influences every aspect of life within Machu Picchu. Movement, construction, and daily activity are all affected by the conditions of the land. The need to navigate steep slopes, manage water, and respond to changes in the ground becomes part of the experience of living in this environment. The challenges are not separate from the city, but part of its context. Understanding these conditions is essential for maintaining stability within the city. Without awareness of how rainfall, landslides, and earthquakes affect the land, it would be difficult to create a settlement that can endure. The environment requires more than simple adaptation. It requires an ongoing relationship between the land and the structures placed upon it. The steep slopes of Machu Picchu define how the city is positioned, but they also introduce limitations. There is little space for error, as the ground does not provide wide or forgiving areas for expansion. This limitation shapes how the city is organized, requiring careful placement of each element. The terrain dictates what is possible, and the city must respond to these conditions. The risk of erosion adds to these challenges as water gradually removes material from the slopes. This process may be slow, but it is continuous, influencing the long-term stability of the land. Erosion works alongside rainfall and landslides, contributing to the overall movement of the terrain. The combination of these factors means that the environment is never completely stable. Despite these challenges, the city exists within this landscape, demonstrating that it is possible to build in such conditions with careful planning. The presence of Machu Picchu shows that these environmental factors were not ignored, but recognized as part of the setting in which the city was developed. The challenges are not obstacles to be removed, but conditions to be understood. The interaction between the environment and the city creates a balance where both influence each other. The land shapes the city, and the city responds to the land. This relationship is ongoing as the environment continues to change and the structures remain within it. The ability to exist within this balance is a defining aspect of Machu Picchu. As we continue, we will move into the structural stability of Machu Picchu, examining how construction techniques and design choices allowed the city to remain intact, despite the environmental challenges it faces. The structural stability of Machu Picchu is the result of careful design choices that allow the city to remain intact within a challenging environment. The buildings and terraces are not fixed in a rigid way, but constructed to respond to the conditions of the land. One of the key features of this stability is the use of stone construction that allows for slight movement. Instead of cracking or breaking under pressure, the stones can shift in response to changes in the ground and then settle back into place. This ability to move slightly is important in a region where earthquakes occur. When the ground shifts, structures that are too rigid may fail, as they cannot absorb the force of the movement. At Machu Picchu, the fitted stone blocks create a system where each piece supports the others while still allowing for minor adjustments. This flexibility reduces the stress placed on individual parts of the structure, helping to maintain its overall form over time. The terraces also play a central role in maintaining stability across the site. These stepped platforms are not only used for agriculture, but also act as a system that supports the slopes of the mountain. By dividing the slope into a series of levels, the terraces reduce the pressure that would otherwise build up in the soil. This prevents large sections of the ground from shifting all at once, distributing weight more evenly across the area. In addition to reducing pressure, the terraces help control how water moves through the soil. When rain falls, it is absorbed and guided through the layers behind the terrace walls, rather than flowing freely across the surface. This controlled movement prevents water from collecting in ways that could weaken the ground. By managing both weight and moisture, the terraces contribute to the long-term stability of the slopes. Drainage systems are another important part of the city's structural stability. Water that is not absorbed by the soil must be directed away from structures to prevent damage. Channels and drainage pathways allow excess water to move through the city without pooling around foundations. This reduces the risk of erosion and prevents the weakening of the ground beneath buildings and terraces. The preparation of foundations is also critical in a landscape where the ground is uneven. Before structures were built, the surface of the ridge had to be adjusted to create stable bases. This involved shaping the ground and ensuring that the weight of the buildings would be supported evenly. Foundations were not placed on unstable or uneven areas without modification, but carefully prepared to provide a reliable base. These foundations work together with the stone construction to create a stable system. The ground supports the structures, while the structures are designed to adapt to the ground. This relationship ensures that neither element places excessive stress on the other. Instead, they function as parts of a connected system where stability is shared. The combination of flexible stone construction, supportive terraces, effective drainage, and prepared foundations creates a structure that can endure over long periods of time. Each element contributes to the overall stability of the city, ensuring that it remains intact despite the challenges of the environment. The system does not rely on a single solution, but on multiple approaches that work together. The design of Machu Picchu reflects an understanding that stability is not achieved by resisting all movement, but by allowing controlled responses to it. The structures do not attempt to remain completely fixed, but adjust to changes in the ground. This approach reduces the likelihood of sudden failure, as the system can absorb and distribute forces rather than concentrating them in one area. The integration of these features into the overall design of the city shows that stability was considered from the beginning of construction. The placement of terraces, the shaping of foundations, and the fitting of stones all contribute to a system that is able to function within a dynamic environment. Each decision supports the others, creating a network of elements that maintain balance. The long-term survival of Machu Picchu demonstrates the effectiveness of these methods. Despite exposure to rainfall, shifting ground, and seismic activity, much of the city remains intact. This is not the result of chance, but of a system that was designed to respond to the conditions in which it exists. The stability of the city reflects the ability to combine multiple techniques into a single approach. The relationship between the structures and the land is central to this stability. The city does not stand apart from the mountain, but is integrated into it. The terraces shape the slopes, the foundations align with the ground, and the stone construction responds to movement. This integration ensures that the city remains connected to the environment that supports it. The effectiveness of this system also depends on how its elements interact over time. As conditions change, the system continues to function because it is not dependent on fixed or rigid connections. Instead, it allows for adjustment and adaptation, maintaining stability even as the environment shifts. This ongoing interaction between structure and environment is a defining feature of Machu Picchu. As we continue, we will move into the role and purpose of Machu Picchu, exploring how the city may have been used, why it was built, and the different interpretations that exist regarding its function within the Inca Empire. The role and purpose of Machu Picchu has been studied extensively, yet it remains a subject that is not defined by a single explanation. One of the main interpretations is that the city may have served as a royal estate for Inca rulers. This suggests that it was used as a place connected to leadership, where members of the ruling class could reside or spend time away from other parts of the empire. The location of the city, positioned high in the mountains and separated from larger population centers, supports the idea that it was intended for a specific group rather than for general use. If Machu Picchu functioned as a royal estate, its design would reflect the needs and expectations of those who held positions of authority. The organization of the city, including its residential areas and prominent structures, suggests a level of planning that goes beyond basic settlement. The placement of buildings, the integration of agricultural systems, and the presence of ceremonial spaces all contribute to an environment that could support both living and administrative functions. This interpretation connects the physical structure of the city to a broader system of governance within the Inca Empire. Another interpretation is that Machu Picchu served as a religious center, where activities related to belief and ceremonial practice took place. The presence of temples and structures aligned with natural cycles supports this possibility. These elements indicate that the city included spaces designed for observation and ritual, connecting the built environment to the patterns of the natural world. If the city held a religious function, it would have been a place where these practices were carried out in a structured and meaningful way. The idea of Machu Picchu as a religious center does not exclude other uses, but adds another layer to how the city may have functioned. Religious activities could have been integrated into daily life, influencing how space was used and how the city was experienced. The alignment of structures with natural cycles suggests that these practices were connected to the environment, reinforcing the relationship between belief and the surrounding landscape. Some scholars also suggest that Machu Picchu may have had strategic importance within the Inca Empire. Its location, high above the surrounding valleys and positioned between mountain peaks, provides a vantage point that allows for observation of the surrounding region. This position could have been used to monitor movement or to maintain awareness of activity within nearby areas. The natural barriers created by the terrain also add to its defensive potential, limiting access and making it more secure. The possibility of a strategic function highlights the importance of location in understanding the purpose of the city. The ridge, the surrounding slopes, and the distance from other settlements all contribute to a position that is both isolated and elevated. This combination of features supports the idea that the city was placed with intention, taking advantage of the natural characteristics of the landscape. Despite these interpretations, the exact purpose of Machu Picchu is not fully confirmed. The available evidence allows for multiple explanations, but does not provide a single answer that defines the city completely. This uncertainty is part of what makes Machu Picchu a subject of ongoing study, as different aspects of the site can be interpreted in different ways. The absence of a definitive explanation means that the role of the city must be considered from multiple perspectives. Rather than serving only one function, it is possible that Machu Picchu supported several roles at the same time. The presence of residential areas, agricultural terraces, and ceremonial structures suggests that the city was designed to accommodate different activities. These functions do not exist in isolation, but can overlap, creating a setting where multiple purposes are fulfilled within the same space. This combination allows the city to operate as a complex system rather than a single-purpose site. The idea of multiple functions also reflects the organization of the Inca Empire, where different aspects of life were often connected. Governance, belief, and daily activity were not always separated, but part of a larger structure that linked them together. Machu Picchu, as part of this system, may have served different roles depending on the needs of the time, adapting to changes within the empire. The design of the city supports this possibility, as it includes elements that can be associated with different functions. Residential areas provide space for living, terraces support food production, and temples create spaces for ceremonial activity. The integration of these elements suggests that the city was intended to function as a complete environment, capable of supporting various aspects of life. The uncertainty surrounding the purpose of Machu Picchu also highlights the limits of interpretation based on physical evidence alone. While the structures provide clues, they do not always reveal how they were used in practice. This means that understanding the role of the city requires consideration of both its physical features and the broader context of the Inca Empire. The continued study of Machu Picchu reflects the complexity of its design and the range of possibilities regarding its use. Each interpretation adds to the understanding of the site, even if it does not provide a final answer. The combination of evidence and interpretation creates a picture of a city that was carefully planned and used in ways that may have changed over time. The role of Machu Picchu within the Inca Empire can therefore be seen as flexible rather than fixed. It may have served as a royal estate, a religious center, a strategic location, or a combination of these roles. The integration of different elements within the city supports the idea that it was designed to accommodate multiple functions, reflecting the complexity of the system in which it existed. As we continue, we will move into the connections between Machu Picchu and the wider Inca Empire, examining how the city was linked through roads, communication, and the movement of resources across the landscape. Machu Picchu was not an isolated city existing without connection, but part of a wider system that linked different regions of the Inca Empire. These connections were established through a network of roads that extended across mountains, valleys, and other challenging landscapes. This road system allowed movement between settlements, creating pathways that connected distant locations into a single structure. Even though Machu Picchu is positioned in a remote area, it was integrated into this network, allowing it to function as part of a larger system. The Inca road network was designed to cross difficult terrain, adapting to the natural features of the landscape rather than avoiding them. Roads followed mountain ridges, crossed valleys, and connected areas that would otherwise be separated by natural barriers. This system made it possible to travel between locations that were not easily accessible, supporting communication and movement across the empire. Machu Picchu, connected through these roads, was part of this broader pattern of movement. These connections allowed for the movement of people between settlements, ensuring that Machu Picchu was not completely cut off despite its location. Travel along the road system required knowledge of the terrain and the ability to navigate changing conditions. The presence of these routes shows that the city was accessible through established pathways, even if reaching it required effort. This accessibility allowed the city to remain part of the wider network of the empire. Messengers played a key role in maintaining communication across this network. They traveled along the roads, carrying information between different parts of the empire. This system allowed messages to move quickly despite the distances involved, ensuring that communication could be maintained between settlements. Machu Picchu, connected through this network, would have been included in this flow of information, receiving and sending messages as part of the broader system. The use of messengers reflects the need for coordination across the empire. Information about resources, movement, and activity needed to be shared between locations to maintain organization. The road network provided the structure for this communication, while messengers ensured that information could travel along it. This combination allowed the empire to function as a connected system rather than a collection of isolated settlements. In addition to communication, the road network supported the movement of goods and resources. Trade and exchange occurred between different regions, allowing materials and products to move across the landscape. This exchange was important for maintaining balance within the empire, as different areas provided different resources. Machu Picchu, as part of this network, would have been connected to this system of exchange, receiving and contributing resources as needed. The movement of resources required coordination, as goods needed to be transported across difficult terrain. The road network provided the pathways for this movement, while the organization of labor ensured that resources could be carried between locations. This system allowed settlements to support one another, reducing the need for each location to rely solely on its immediate surroundings. The connection of Machu Picchu to the wider network also reflects its role within the empire. While the city may appear isolated due to its position, it was not separate from the systems that supported the Inca. The roads link it to other settlements, ensuring that it remains part of the structure that connects different regions. This integration allows the city to function within the broader context of the empire. The design of the road network shows an understanding of how to create connections in a challenging environment. Rather than forcing direct routes across difficult terrain, the roads follow paths that allow for more stable and manageable travel. This approach ensures that the network remains usable over time, even as conditions change. The connection to Machu Picchu reflects this same approach, linking the city through routes that adapt to the landscape. The presence of these connections also influences how the city operates. Access to other regions allows for the movement of people, information, and resources, supporting the functions of the settlement. Without these connections, Machu Picchu would be limited to what is available within its immediate environment. The road network extends its reach, linking it to a larger system. The relationship between Machu Picchu and the road network is part of a broader pattern within the Inca Empire, where settlements are connected through structured pathways. This pattern allows for coordination across distances, ensuring that different parts of the empire can function together. The inclusion of Machu Picchu within this network shows that it was not an isolated development, but part of this organized system. The movement of messengers and resources along the roads creates a continuous flow that connects different regions. This flow supports both communication and exchange, allowing information and materials to move between locations. Machu Picchu, as part of this system, participates in this flow, contributing to and receiving from the network. The integration of the city into the road network demonstrates how connections are maintained, even in remote locations. The terrain does not prevent communication or movement, but shapes how these processes occur. By adapting to the landscape, the network ensures that even difficult locations remain connected. As we continue, we will move into the decline of Machu Picchu, examining how changes within the Inca Empire influenced the city and how its population gradually decreased over time. The decline of Machu Picchu took place during a period when the Inca Empire itself was undergoing significant change. The city did not exist independently of the empire, but as part of a larger system that connected different regions, resources, and communities. As this system began to weaken, the effects were felt across the settlements that depended on it. Machu Picchu, positioned within this network, was influenced by these broader changes, which contributed to its gradual decline. The city was eventually abandoned, but this process did not occur as a single sudden event. Instead, it unfolded over time as the conditions that supported the settlement began to shift. The structures remained in place, and the systems within the city continued to exist, but the population decreased. As fewer people remained, the ability to maintain the systems that supported daily life became more limited. This gradual reduction in activity marks the beginning of the city's decline. The reasons for this abandonment are not fully understood, and no single explanation accounts for the change. This uncertainty reflects the complexity of the situation, where multiple factors may have contributed to the decline. Changes within the structure of the Inca Empire are often considered a key influence, as shifts in leadership, organization, or resource distribution could affect distant settlements like Machu Picchu. When the system that supports a city changes, the city itself is also affected. The broader decline of the Inca Empire created conditions that made it more difficult to maintain distant or specialized settlements. As control over different regions changed, the connections that linked these areas could weaken. Communication, movement of resources, and coordination between locations may have been disrupted. For a city like Machu Picchu, which depended on these connections, such changes would have had a direct impact on its ability to function. External pressures from the Spanish conquest also influenced the region during this period. As Spanish forces moved through the lands of the Inca Empire, they brought changes that affected the structure of the existing system. Settlements were altered, populations shifted, and the organization of the empire was disrupted. Even if Machu Picchu was not directly encountered, these broader changes would still affect the environment in which it existed. The impact of these external pressures was not limited to direct contact. The presence of new forces within the region could alter trade routes, communication pathways, and patterns of movement. This would affect how resources and information flowed across the empire. For Machu Picchu, which relied on these systems, such disruptions could contribute to its decline, even without direct interaction with these forces. As the population of the city began to decrease, the systems that supported daily life became more difficult to maintain. Agricultural terraces require regular care, water systems need to be managed, and structures must be maintained to remain stable. With fewer people available to carry out these tasks, the effectiveness of these systems would gradually reduce. This creates a cycle where reduced maintenance leads to decreased functionality, which in turn supports further decline. The gradual loss of population also affects how the city is used. Areas that were once active become less frequently visited, and the organization of space changes as fewer people occupy it. The pathways that connect different parts of the city may be used less often, and the coordination between different areas becomes more limited. This shift reflects a change from a functioning settlement to a space that is slowly becoming inactive. Despite these changes, the physical structures of Machu Picchu remain largely intact during the period of decline. The stone construction continues to provide stability, even as activity within the city decreases. This separation between physical stability and functional decline highlights how the city can remain standing while its use changes. The structures do not immediately collapse or disappear, but remain as the activity within them reduces. The uncertainty surrounding the exact reasons for the decline reflects the limits of available information. While patterns can be observed and connections can be made to broader events, the full picture is not completely known. This means that the decline of Machu Picchu must be understood as a process influenced by multiple factors rather than a single cause. The relationship between the city and the wider Inca Empire is central to understanding this decline. As the empire changes, the settlements within it are affected. Machu Picchu, as part of this system, reflects these changes in its own development. The decline of the city is therefore connected to the decline of the larger structure in which it existed. The gradual nature of this process means that the city transitions from an active settlement to a space that is no longer maintained. This transition is not marked by a single event, but by a series of changes that occur over time. Each change contributes to the overall decline, leading to a point where the city is no longer functioning as it once did. The presence of external pressures and internal changes creates a complex environment where multiple influences act at the same time. The interaction between these factors shapes the way the city declines, making it difficult to separate one cause from another. Instead, the decline is the result of these combined influences. As we continue, we will move into the abandonment of Machu Picchu, examining what happened after the city was no longer actively maintained and how it became gradually hidden within the surrounding landscape. After the decline of Machu Picchu, the city entered a period of abandonment, where it was no longer actively maintained by a stable population. This transition did not involve the destruction of the structures or the removal of the buildings. Instead, the city was left in place, with its systems no longer supported by regular activity. Without people to maintain the terraces, pathways, and water systems, the environment began to take a more active role in shaping the condition of the site. One of the first changes that occurred during this period was the gradual growth of vegetation across the city. Plants began to take root in the soil and along the edges of stone structures, spreading over pathways and terraces. This process did not happen quickly, but developed over time as seeds settled into the ground and began to grow. The presence of consistent moisture in the region supported this growth, allowing vegetation to expand across areas that were no longer being cleared or managed. As vegetation spread, it began to cover parts of the city, reducing the visibility of its structures. Pathways that were once clearly defined became less distinct as plants grew across their surfaces. Terraces, which had been maintained for agricultural use, began to blend into the surrounding slopes as vegetation filled the spaces between the stone walls. This gradual covering of the city did not remove its structures, but changed how they appeared within the landscape. The growth of vegetation also affected how the city functioned as a physical space. Areas that were once accessible became more difficult to reach as plants filled in open spaces and pathways. Movement through the city became limited, not because the structures were gone, but because they were no longer maintained. This change reflects the shift from an active settlement to a space that was becoming part of the natural environment. The absence of maintenance also influenced the condition of the terraces. Without regular care, the balance of soil and water within the terraces began to change. While the structural design of the terraces allowed them to remain stable, the lack of active management meant that they were no longer used for cultivation. Over time, they became part of the landscape rather than a functional system for growing crops. As the terraces and pathways became overgrown, the overall visibility of Machu Picchu continued to decrease. The city did not disappear suddenly, but became less noticeable as it blended into the surrounding environment. The combination of vegetation, terrain, and cloud cover contributed to this effect, making the site less distinct from the landscape around it. This gradual process of concealment played a role in how the city remained hidden over time. The integration of the city into the landscape during this period reflects the relationship between built structures and natural processes. Without ongoing human activity, the environment begins to reshape the space, filling in gaps and covering surfaces. This does not immediately destroy the structures, but changes how they are experienced. The city becomes part of the environment rather than a separate space within it. Despite these changes, the stone structures of Machu Picchu remained largely intact. The construction methods used in the city allowed the buildings to withstand the effects of time and environmental conditions. The stones continued to hold their positions, maintaining the form of the structures even as vegetation grew around them. This durability ensured that the city did not collapse or lose its overall shape during the period of abandonment. The continued presence of the structures beneath the vegetation meant that the city was preserved in a state that still reflected its original design. While access and visibility were reduced, the layout of the city remained in place. This preservation is a result of both the strength of the construction and the nature of the abandonment, which did not involve active destruction. The gradual covering of the city also contributed to its protection. As vegetation grew over the structures, it limited the exposure of the site to external influences. This natural covering reduced the likelihood of interference as the city became less visible and less accessible. In this way, the process of overgrowth helped preserve the site by creating a barrier between the structures and the outside environment. The abandonment of Machu Picchu represents a shift from active use to passive existence. The systems that once supported daily life were no longer maintained, and the city transitioned into a state where natural processes played a larger role. The absence of people allowed the environment to shape the space, while the durability of the structures ensured that the city remained in place. This period of abandonment is important in understanding how Machu Picchu was preserved. Without the continued presence of a population, the city was not altered or rebuilt in ways that would change its original form. Instead, it remained largely as it had been, with the addition of natural elements that gradually covered it. The balance between preservation and change defines this stage of the city's history. While the structures remained stable, their visibility and accessibility changed over time. The city did not disappear, but became part of the landscape, existing beneath layers of vegetation and within the conditions of the mountains. As we continue, we will move into the rediscovery of Machu Picchu, examining how the city was brought back into wider attention and how its structures were documented and studied after centuries of being hidden within the landscape. Machu Picchu was brought to wider attention in the early 20th century, marking a shift from a period of isolation to one of recognition and study. For many years, the city had remained outside of broader awareness, existing within the landscape without being widely documented. Its position in the mountains, combined with the effects of vegetation and limited access, contributed to its absence from wider records. This changed when the site was encountered, and its presence became known beyond its immediate surroundings. The process of rediscovery did not involve uncovering a completely hidden structure beneath the ground, but rather recognizing and documenting a site that had become less visible over time. The stone structures were still present, and much of the layout remained intact, but the city had been partially covered by vegetation and integrated into the surrounding environment. The act of bringing it to wider attention involved identifying the significance of the site and beginning to study its features in a more structured way. Explorers who reached Machu Picchu began documenting what they observed, recording the arrangement of the buildings and the condition of the structures. This initial documentation focused on what was visible, including the terraces, pathways, and stone constructions that defined the city. The process of recording these features allowed for a clearer understanding of how the site was organized and how it had been constructed. The early stages of study were limited to what could be directly observed, as the site had not yet been fully examined. Vegetation still covered parts of the city, and some areas were not immediately accessible. Despite these limitations, the visible structures provided enough information to recognize that Machu Picchu was not a simple or isolated settlement, but a complex and carefully planned city. This recognition marked the beginning of a more detailed examination of the site. As documentation continued, the complexity of Machu Picchu became more apparent. The arrangement of terraces, the precision of the stone construction, and the organization of different areas within the city revealed a level of planning that required further study. Each element contributed to a growing understanding of how the city functioned and how it was connected to the broader context of the Inca Empire. The process of rediscovery also involved clearing some of the vegetation that had grown over the site. This allowed more of the structures to become visible, making it easier to examine the layout and condition of the city. As additional areas were revealed, the scale of Machu Picchu became clearer, showing the extent of its construction and the detail of its design. This gradual exposure of the site provided new information that contributed to its study. With increased visibility, the site began to gain recognition beyond those who first documented it. Reports and records of Machu Picchu reached a wider audience, leading to greater interest in the city and its significance. This shift from local awareness to broader recognition marked an important stage in the history of the site, as it moved from being a relatively unknown location to one that attracted attention from different fields of study. The recognition of Machu Picchu as an important site led to further efforts to examine and understand it. Researchers and observers began to study its features in more detail, building on the initial documentation. This process involved comparing the structures and layout of the city with other known aspects of the Inca Empire, placing Machu Picchu within a larger historical context. The rediscovery of the city also raised questions about its purpose, construction, and role within the empire. As more information became available, different interpretations emerged, contributing to ongoing study and discussion. The process of rediscovery did not provide all the answers, but opened the way for further investigation. The condition of the site at the time of rediscovery played a role in how it was understood. Because the structures remained largely intact, it was possible to observe the design and organization of the city without significant alteration. This allowed for a clearer connection between the physical features of the site and the interpretations made about its use. The preservation of the structures made Machu Picchu a valuable source of information about Inca construction and planning. The rediscovery of Machu Picchu represents a transition from a period of concealment to one of study and recognition. The city did not change in its physical form at that moment, but its place within wider awareness did. The act of documenting and examining the site allowed it to become part of a broader understanding of history, connecting it to discussions about the Inca Empire and its achievements. This stage also highlights the role of observation and documentation in shaping how a site is understood. The initial focus on visible structures provided a foundation for further study, while the gradual clearing of vegetation revealed additional details. Each step in the process contributed to a more complete picture of the city. The rediscovery of Machu Picchu did not mark the end of its story, but the beginning of a new phase where it became the subject of continued research and interest. The information gathered during this period laid the groundwork for future study, allowing the site to be examined in greater depth. As we continue, we will move into the modern study of Machu Picchu, exploring how ongoing research, preservation efforts, and new discoveries continue to shape the understanding of this city in the present. Machu Picchu continues to be an active area of study, where researchers examine its structures, layout, and construction methods to gain a deeper understanding of how the city was built and how it functioned. Archaeologists focus on the details of the stonework, the organization of space, and the systems that support stability within the environment. Each element provides information that contributes to a broader understanding of the site, allowing new insights to emerge over time. Ongoing research has revealed the level of planning involved in the construction of Machu Picchu. The alignment of structures, the integration of terraces, and the management of water all reflect a system that was designed with precision. By studying these features, researchers are able to understand how different parts of the city work together, forming a connected and functional environment. This process of study builds on earlier observations, adding detail and depth to what is known about the site. New discoveries continue to shape the understanding of Machu Picchu as areas that were not fully examined in earlier studies are explored in greater detail. These discoveries do not change the overall presence of the city, but add to the knowledge of how it was constructed and used. Each finding contributes to a more complete picture, connecting individual features to the larger system that defines the site. Preservation efforts play an important role in maintaining Machu Picchu, ensuring that its structures remain stable and accessible. The environment continues to affect the site, with rainfall, vegetation, and natural processes influencing its condition. Preservation involves managing these factors, protecting the structures while allowing the site to remain part of its natural setting. This balance ensures that the city can be studied and experienced without losing its original form. The continued study of Machu Picchu allows researchers to explore how the city functioned within the Inca Empire. By examining its layout, construction methods, and systems, it becomes possible to understand how it relates to other settlements and how it fits within the broader structure of the empire. This connection provides context, linking Machu Picchu to the wider patterns of organization and development that defined the Inca. Machu Picchu is now recognized as one of the most significant archaeological sites in the world, representing a high point in Inca engineering and planning. Its location, construction, and preservation make it a unique example of how a city can be built within a challenging environment and remain intact over long periods of time. This recognition reflects both the physical presence of the site and its importance in understanding the past. Visitors from around the world travel to Machu Picchu, drawn by its position within the mountains and its historical significance. The site provides an opportunity to observe the structures directly, experiencing the layout and environment in a way that cannot be fully captured through description alone. This interaction with the site adds to its importance, connecting people in the present to a city built in the past. The presence of visitors also requires careful management, as increased activity can affect the condition of the site. Preservation efforts must balance access with protection, ensuring that the structures remain stable while allowing people to experience them. This balance reflects the ongoing relationship between the site and those who study and visit it. Machu Picchu contributes to a broader understanding of ancient civilizations, providing insight into how societies can organize space, manage resources, and build within complex environments. The city demonstrates how knowledge, planning, and coordination can produce structures that endure over time. This contribution extends beyond the site itself, influencing how other historical and archaeological studies are approached. The preservation of Machu Picchu allows for continued exploration of these ideas, ensuring that the site remains available for study and observation. As research continues, new interpretations and connections may emerge, adding to the understanding of how the city functioned and what it represents. The site remains a source of information that can be revisited and re-examined. The legacy of Machu Picchu is shaped by its ability to remain intact within a demanding environment. The city demonstrates that it is possible to build in conditions that require adaptation, using methods that respond to natural forces rather than resist them. This approach creates a system that is both stable and flexible, allowing the city to endure over time. The survival of the site also reflects the effectiveness of its design. The combination of stone construction, terraces, water management, and layout creates a structure that can exist within a changing landscape, Each element contributes to the overall stability of the city, ensuring that it remains in place despite the challenges it faces. Machu Picchu represents a connection between past and present, where the work of those who built the city can still be observed and studied. The structures provide a direct link to a time when the Inca Empire was at its height, offering insight into the methods and systems that supported it. This connection allows the city to remain relevant, not only as a historical site, but as an example of human achievement. The relationship between the city and its environment is central to this legacy. Machu Picchu is not separate from the mountains, but part of them, shaped by the land and responding to it. This integration reflects a way of building that considers the environment as a partner rather than an obstacle. The result is a city that remains stable within a landscape that continues to change. The continued study and preservation of Machu Picchu ensure that its significance remains recognized. The site provides a way to explore how ancient systems functioned and how they can inform understanding in the present. Each observation and discovery adds to the knowledge of how the city was created and how it continues to exist. Machu Picchu remains a symbol of what can be achieved through careful planning, adaptation, and understanding of the environment. Its structures stand as evidence of a system that brought together multiple elements into a unified whole, creating a city that continues to be studied and appreciated. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you enjoyed learning about Machu Picchu.